As a kid growing up, I loved Garfield the cat. And not in that, oh, look, Jim Davis draws the same gag every week way, or the ironic Garfield minus Garfield, look at John Arbuckle's existential angst way. No, I appreciated Garfield for exactly what he was. I didn't like going to school, so I hated Mondays. Garfield also hated Mondays. One of my favorite foods to eat was lasagna. Garfield also loved to eat lasagna. He got to be sarcastic and snarky and even occasionally push Odie off the table. And I wished I could do that to people who annoyed me too. So I was all in favor of Garfield as a kid. There was nothing about him I didn't appreciate. I thought his wit and sense of humor was right up my alley. I had tons of those little Garfield books, the 3 panel to a page books that were just released one after another. I had like 15 volumes of them, and I even loved the Garfield cartoons that they would air occasionally on TV with Lorenzo Music as the voice of Garfield. Then later on, they had a Saturday morning series called Garfield and Friends. I was a big fan of that too. I even gave the Jim Davis spinoff that they ran in the middle of Garfield and Friends a fair chance, the one called U.S. Acres. And thankfully, my wife was also a Garfield fan too, because to this day she can still do an impression of Binky from Garfield and Friends. She loves to just look at me and go, "Hey, cat!" Yeah, Binky was a very annoying clown for those of you who never watched the cartoon or read the comics. So, this is Garfield caught in the act for Sega Genesis. This came out in 1995 on Genesis and Game Gear, or if you live in the PAL territories, Mega Drive. This never came out on Nintendo, so it makes for a perfect episode of Genesis Does What Nintendo Don't. I should note two things about this. First, that it did come out for Windows PC in 1996, so it was possible to play the game there, and that it also came out on the Sega Channel with 3 additional levels called The Lost Levels, which, to my knowledge, there was no other way to get, but if they were on the PC version, please feel free to let me know. I think the Game Gear version had different levels from both of those, but I have not played it, so I cannot attest to that one way or the other. Now, this is a platforming game where Garfield gets sucked into the television, which you will see in a moment when I hit the start button. He and Odie are in the living room. Odie comes up and scares him. Bark! And Garfield leaps high in the air, lands on the television, and breaks it. So, these two hapless fools try to fix it before John comes home and punishes them, but they do a very poor job. The TV is still busted, obviously, and when they try to use it, things go haywire, and Garfield gets sucked into the world of television. Now, this is obviously a ridiculous premise, but then Garfield is in many ways a ridiculous cartoon and comic strip, so it's not out of the realm of things that would actually happen to Garfield. He got into some pretty zany adventures. That was part of the thing that actually appealed to me about Garfield was he would have real life problems and real life insecurities and real life situations that he would deal with, but then he would also get into some completely fantastical, unbelievable situations, and he would put on a cape and become the Paisley Avenger and think of himself as a superhero. He was just fun for a kid. Again, there was nothing ironic or, so bad it's good about Garfield for me as a kid. I just appreciated Garfield for what he was. And if I had been able to play this when I was a little kid, that would have been great. But sadly for me, I was a kid of the 1980s, and this game came out in the mid-90s. And by then, I no longer had my Sega Genesis because my roommate took it with me when he left college, and then I transferred from one university to another anyway. And by the time I ended up at my new university, I had a roommate who had a PlayStation. So I was either playing PC games on my computer in my dorm room or playing his PlayStation when he wasn't obsessing over Lara Croft's ass in Tomb Raider. And I do mean obsessing. He got way more out of those polygons than I think most people should, but I digress. As you can see, these hanging Odies on the top of the ceiling. You have to jump up and pull on their tongue to release a lever, and then that lever, once it's pulled, it will cause a platform to rise up, and Garfield can time it correctly to jump on that platform and escape from this crypt. I was disappointed that when I played this, you can't actually whip the candles with your claws or throw skulls at them, because those are your two available weapons in Count Slobula's castle. You can either whip or throw skulls, and the amount of skulls you have left is indicated in the corner right there. So as you can see, my total went down while I was throwing them, but you can ride that platform back up to get out of this crypt and then traverse the rest of the level, working your way towards the boss, Count Slobula. And if you hadn't already guessed it by the name, he's a parody of Count Dracula that is in fact Odie, because Odie slobbers everywhere. That's one of his signature traits. Now, this is my first time playing the game, so you're going to see that I am not very good at it, and I do have to apologize for that. But I think because it is a very accessible platformer, all you do is jump, throw, and use your claws. I think given time, I could probably get to be pretty good at it. And it is well animated too. I mean, for a fan of the Garfield cartoons, this would have, again, been right up my alley. Now, obviously, due to the space limitations of a Genesis/Mega Drive cartridge, they don't have Lorenzo Music providing the voice of Garfield, nor are we going to hear from John Arbuckle or Arlene or Odie or Normal the Kitten. None of those are actually going to be heard in this game, but those voices still can be heard in my head as I'm playing the game. I'm even hearing Garfield getting excited when he sees his Pookie teddy bear, and so far as I can tell, when you find the Pookie teddy bears, they are the save points. I could be wrong about that, but if you saw me open the clamshell earlier, you'll notice there were no instructions in the box, nor was there the free Garfield comic that was promised on the cover of the box, and even more bizarre still, my cartridge had a not for resale sticker on it, so I have to think that this copy of Caught in the Act was either somehow a pack-in, which I didn't know Genesis would do Caught in the Act as a pack-in game. I thought the pack-ins for Sega Genesis were always like Columns or Sonic the Hedgehog, or maybe this was a rental copy that they sold to someplace like Blockbuster, and then Blockbuster just took the instructions out of it. But you would think if it was like a rental copy, it would have had a bunch of rental stickers on the front and the side, or underneath the plastic on the cover art, and none of that was the case. There was no distinguishing features in the box that marked it as a rental copy, so that not for resale sticker on the artwork just perplexes me. But to make a long story short, if you by chance have the instructions in the comic book and don't need them, like say you bought a Genesis lot off eBay and they came with, but you didn't get the cartridge or the box, then feel free to contact me here on YouTube or at Mr. MegaManFan on Twitter, MrMegaManFan. I would, of course, take a donation, but I would also happily trade for those. In fact, there are about 50 Genesis games that I have box and cartridge for with no manual that I would love to complete. So if you want to know my list, hit me up, because I'm always willing to trade for manuals to complete some of my Sega Genesis games. And here we're getting close to getting to Count Slobula's castle. As you can see, Garfield's power-ups are food, because there's nothing Garfield loves more than eating, so he picks up hamburgers and slices of pizza to regain health, and his health is kept tabs on by that TV up in the corner. When you gain extra health, the number in the TV set goes up, and when you lose it, the number goes down, obviously. So that is how you play Garfield Caught in the Act. You try to keep your health up, you traverse the levels trying to work your way towards the boss, and then you clear the boss and use the TV remote to return back to the main hub world, or whatever you would call it. At least that's how I think it would work, but I'm not sure if you just go directly to the next level or not, but it seemed to me like when I played it at the beginning, it was a hub world and the doors were going to take you from one place to the next. The dying animation is definitely creepy. It looks like the TV swallows you whole, so if you're the kind of person who would be triggered by a giant set of teeth coming out of your TV, don't watch that. But here's Count Slobula himself, obviously flying around like a bat and sending more bats at you. This makes it actually easy to hate Odie. Normally, Odie is just the victim of Garfield's pranks, and sometimes you actually feel bad for him. But in this case, he's decidedly being a jerk because he's trying to kill us here and trap us in the TV forever. So, boo to you, Odie. I'm going to get you. Unfortunately, I could never figure out how to win this battle because, again, I'm playing this for the very first time right before I record this video and do the narration of my gameplay, so I'm trying to figure it out as I go with no instructions and without having looked it up ahead of time, and that wasn't working so well. I need to at least read a fact on GameFAQs or look up some YouTube footage of somebody playing this game and see what it is that you have to do to defeat Count Slobula. At one point, it looked like I could knock him into the coffin by hitting him with a skull, but once I actually knocked him into the coffin, I couldn't figure out how to keep him there. I tried standing on the coffin, that didn't help. I didn't know if there was something I was supposed to do, like hit the coffin once he got trapped in it. As you can see, he just pops right back out of it again, so that doesn't seem to be the way to win the battle. I'm sure somebody who is more familiar with Garfield Caught in the Act, who played it back in the day, or who had the Sega channel and downloaded the game on their cable system, will be able to tell me more about it. But I will definitely be playing more of this game because for $10 for the cartridge and the box, I felt it was a very good pickup. And not even just saying that as a Garfield fan, just saying that as it's a good platformer game, and I look forward to playing it more. This is Mr. MegaManFan, and I'm signing off.